The way today will work is this. We'll spend the first 10 minutes or so exploring the basic principles of Amion. We'll take a look at a finished schedule. We'll explain how it's generally used, some of the different kinds of schedules that exist. And after that, we'll dive into building a schedule of our own together from scratch. And we'll start with something really simple and straightforward, and we'll get a little more complex as we go. And towards the end, we will talk about things like the auto scheduler and gathering requests from providers online and swapping shifts and running reports and stuff like that. That should take us to about 45 minutes in. And then towards the end, we'll I'll ask for a little Q&A, questions and answers. If you'd like to see something in more detail, let me know, anything like that. And I'm very informal. Please feel free to interrupt me with a chat blurb if you wish. That's totally fine. No problems there. So let's start off at amion.com, the homepage here. You can get here from any web browser. You don't have to be on a certain kind of computer. It can be a Mac or a PC or a tablet or a phone. Any browser will work. I'm using Safari, Chrome, Firefox, things like that are fine. Generally, people, when they want to see their schedule, they go to amion.com and they log in with their group's password, and they see who's working. Now, there's also an app. If you scroll down a bit at amion.com, you'll see a couple of pictures from the mobile app. So if you've got an iPhone or an Android phone and you are a provider, you can register with the app and log in and see a nice clean view. This is great for looking at something on a small screen. The app also includes a messaging component, which is a HIPAA-compliant secure messaging platform. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But the app is a nice way to look at schedules on your phone. You can also use your phone's browser to do the same thing. But this is a nice clean way, and you get the messaging component too. The app is free. Messaging's free. There aren't any costs to that. I'll explain more about that in a moment as well. So let's pretend we are a schedulee, not a scheduler, but we're somebody who's a part of a schedule. We want to see when we're working, or we are the switchboard staff at a hospital. We want to see what the schedule looks like. Anybody like that. We'll log in at amion.com using a password. And to start with, I'm going to use site. It's SITE, all lowercase. You guys don't have to do this necessarily. Just kind of follow along with what I'm doing. When I log in with that, the first thing I see is a big list of assignments. This is what we call an enterprise account. You might see the word enterprise on our website, and it sounds like a very fancy sales word. For us, enterprise just means an umbrella of a bunch of schedules under one login. Simple as that. There's no extra costs or anything crazy like that. It just means that a bunch of people who manage different schedules have all of their schedules together under one login. So in this case, it's a big hospital system. And there is a guy named Andy in anesthesia and a woman named Carol in cardiac surgery. They each handle their part of this list and so on down the line, When Andy needs to make a change to his anesthesia schedule, this list gets updated right away at the website. So the people in each department who manage their schedules have control over what's online for staff to see or for the switchboard to see. Back in the olden days, I used to fax my surgery schedule into the switchboard at my hospital, and they'd get faxes from radiology and cardiology and, MFM and all sorts of other groups. They'd have to put together a big list like this manually and fax it back out to the hospital so everyone knew who was working. And then if there was a change to that, they'd have to make a change straight away, and that was a lot of back and forth around the first of each month. With this approach, if Carol in cardiac surgery gets word that there needs to be a change on the schedule, she can make that change and have the website reflect that straight away, which is really neat. So in this list, we see an alphabetical list of departments, services for each. So anesthesia has a night 1 and a night 2 service. These are nighttime services. They're not online yet. They don't come online until 4 p.m. local time. And these guys are on the West Coast, so it'll be a bit before Dr. Jonty and Dr. Spears come on. We can see who they are, their training level, their residents. And over to the right, these guys have messaging set up from the schedule. Amion is a pretty open source kind of system. You'll see this to be true in a few different ways. Like we can send our reports into other systems like payroll systems and stuff like that. We can also sync up really well with other messaging systems. So if you guys use something like Tiger Connect or Patient Safe, or there are like a dozen other messaging systems out there now, you can have your schedule have the contact numbers here be clickable links that let you send messages out to those systems. Or in this case, out to an alphanumeric pager or cell phone or Amion's mobile app. If I wanted to get a message to you, therapist, which is not a real person, but I could do that here. I could say, let's say it's from Lee at Amion, and we want you to call home ASAP. When I click send, this message goes out to that person directly. In this case, these guys have it set up to go to their alphanumeric pager and Amion mobile app, both. So that message went out to that fake person there. There are also ways to send out group pages to multiple people at once. I can talk more about that in a little bit as well. So this list is pretty utilitarian. It's very like Spartan, there's not a lot out here. It's very simple. You can search for a provider. You can look up chunks of schedules by department, look at all the surgery schedules. You can bump ahead and take a look at tomorrow. All pretty straightforward, useful stuff. If I click on the name of a group along the left, like cardiac surgery, I drill down and I see Carol's cardiac surgery world. This is a schedule that we at Amion helped her get up and running. She spent an hour or two on the phone with us at the beginning of things years ago, and we helped her learn the system. And Amion's support and training model is pretty different than the norm. We're just here to give people as much help as they need to learn the system. So we spent an hour or two with Carol, which is typical, and helped her get all of her services entered, all these things people do. It's all open-ended, as you'll see in a minute when we build our schedule together. We helped her color code her names and set the hours correctly, and then Carol was kind of off and running on her own. It's April now, so we see April's schedule pop up on the screen, but we can go back in time and look at older schedule data. We don't take anything down unless people ask us to, so even going back years, all of Carol's schedule data sits out here online for people to review. All that historical stuff stays out there unless Carol calls us and says, please take it down. There are a bunch of icons along the top. I won't go through them all right now. If you've never seen an Amion schedule, they might look a little strange, but they all have mouse over notes. So when in doubt, hold your mouse still and you'll get a little explanation of what's going to happen if you click. You can make your font bigger. You can bump ahead to the next month. Pretty straightforward stuff. There's a nice one here that shows a list of staff, shows all the people on the schedule alphabetically with their contact info. That's kind of neat. If I go back to the grid, and this might be my favorite one. It looks like a couple of black arrows that are pointing towards each other, and the mouse over note says assignments by staff. So I've got a calendar grid on screen that shows me all the assignments with my services down the left. If I want to pivot the table inside out, so to speak, I can click that icon at the top, and it puts names down the y-axis and dates across the top, which is maybe something my providers are used to seeing. So I could have this be the schedule layout, or maybe dates down the left and names across the top. There are lots of ways to lay the schedule out so that people are comfortable with it. Up at the top, there are a couple drop-down menus. Maybe I'm a part of this schedule, but I'm a perfusionist, and I really don't care about all the other cardiac stuff. Show me just the perfusion call stuff. There it is. So there's the one row on our schedule kind of pulled out so I can see just what I need to see. Or maybe I want to see everything on the schedule, but it's one particular person that I want to highlight. Maybe Dr. Blodgett, who's a perfusionist. So now we see all of her assignments in turquoise. A couple of years ago, we started tacking on the end of the month prior and the beginning of the following month so that you can see the last couple of days in March here. And that's helped people toggling back and forth between the months. So if I scroll to the bottom, there's a couple more things I want to show you. There's a time and date stamp. This lets people know when the schedule was last updated. So this one's almost 2 weeks old now. That's the last time Carol made a change. Here's Carol's contact email. If people have questions about the schedule, they can reach out to her. And then there's a pager directory with everyone's name next to their number down below. I can click a number and send a message out like I did before, or I can click on somebody's name, and that pulls up their personal schedule. So here's Dr. Blodgett and all of her assignments only for April. She's on today, but she's off this coming weekend, which is nice. If she wanted to sync up her perfusion call assignments or all of her assignments to her Google Calendar or iCal, iPhone, Outlook, any kind of personal calendar system, she can do that. Maybe she and her husband share an Outlook calendar so they know who's going to be available to pick up Jimmy from soccer practice. they can do that. All of the assignments here will flow into Outlook. If Carol, the scheduler, makes a change, puts Dr. Blodgett on call this weekend, a couple minutes later that flows out into Outlook and appears in her personal calendar right next to Jimmy's soccer practice. So, all of that stuff stays in sync automatically, which is nice for people who keep all of their responsibilities in one, online schedule. All right, so that's what it looks like when a schedule has been built and is published out at Amion.com. This is a kind of typical mid-size schedule. Some schedules are much, much bigger. Some are smaller. There are a couple different kinds of schedules. This is the standard we call it the attending schedule, because it's basically attendings doing a thing on a day at a time. If we head back to Amion.com, the homepage, and I log in with a slightly different login, I will see a much smaller schedule. This is a schedule that has just a couple people working each day, and it's not attached to a big hospital system. This is a standalone account. And while this this session is not meant to be a sales pitch, sometimes people ask about Amion's price tag. A schedule like this one runs $399 a year. It doesn't have anything to do with the number of people on per day, the number of schedulers, the number of staff, the number of assignments. It's a flat rate, And back in that enterprise account that we first looked at, that big list of people working, each department there pays $399 per year. We are not big bookkeepers over here, so we like to keep things pretty simple. Amion's been around for about 20 years, and we're still kind of a lean and mean mom and pop, although we've grown quite a bit in that time. One more type of schedule I want to show you. This is the only other kind. If I log in with a slightly different login at Amion.com, I'll see what's called a residency schedule. So there are two kinds of schedules at Amion. They're attending and resident. Both of those types can be included in an enterprise, but that's really it as far as learning the different offerings that Amion has. Originally, we were a residency solution, and really the only difference between resident and attending schedules is that the residency schedule, like the one we're looking at now, includes a block component, like a rotation component. So Abbott, the PGY1, when she starts her rotations in July, she's on the wards service. The next month, she goes to geriatrics. And depending on what rotation she's on, she might have call every third night or fifth night, or a certain shift she covers every day, or clinic every Thursday afternoon. All of that could be tied to her rotation schedule. A lot of folks that used Amion in residency went on to private practices and faculty positions and asked us to then expand and build the attending platform, which is the same thing, except it doesn't include a block rotation component, because attendings traditionally do the same thing day in and day out, or week in and week out, or month in and month out, that kind of thing. Okay, so that's what it looks like when a schedule's been built and put online. Those are the different possibilities. Up next, we're going to get to building a schedule together, but this is probably a good point to pause and see how everybody's doing. Everybody with me so far? Any questions about the published online view of the schedules? Just a reminder, those online schedules we've been looking at are read-only. We can't make any changes to what we see online. It's like putting a schedule behind a glass bulletin board. We can take a peek at it, but we can't change what's on it. We've only been looking at it the way staff would, or a switchboard operator might. All right. For anybody who might have joined in a little bit late, there's a Zoom toolbar at the top of your screen. Over to the right is a chat option. For me, it's under the ... more option there. You'll see chat, and that's the little chat window we've been typing back and forth. All right, let's get into making a schedule of our own. Thanks for taking notes as we go. I appreciate it. Let's see. So I'm going to log into Amion this time using a password that is tied to my administrative access. So remember that AZ4 schedule we logged into a minute ago? It was really simple. It had just a couple people on each day. It has an administrative password of DD. So every schedule has two passwords. One is an administrative password for the schedule editor, and one is the staff viewing password. That's typically all you'll need for a schedule. There are points at which you'll want a personal password for each provider. When you do something like make requests or swap shifts, you need to kind of identify yourself to the system as a specific person. We'll get into that in a moment. But I'm logging in as an administrator, and I'm actually going to pull up Amion's virtual schedule builder. We for many, many, many years, almost all of our years, folks would build schedules using the on-call program. Here's my on-call icon down at the bottom of my screen. It looks like a little matrix of green and blue and white squares. It's a little bit like Word or Excel. It lets me build a schedule file. I can start with something small and get more and more complicated, and then I publish that schedule file from my computer to the website. Just recently, as in a few weeks ago, we took a copy of this on-call program that's like Word or Excel, and we put it on a web server in the cloud, so to speak. So now our schedule editor lives on a website. This is only used by a few hundred people so far, but it's becoming a really helpful tool now that, in the moment, a lot of people are working from home. So for some people who can't download the on-call program, people at military institutions, VAs, on Mac computers, or if you're in a situation where you can't install something, you can just use your web browser to get to our schedule builder. That's a brand new thing. So I'm going to take a look at my AZ4 schedule. There it is. Let's see. Today is the 23rd, and I've got MR on today. Let's take a look at the daily list for our schedule. Mars Rover is my call person today, call 24. Okay, I just got a phone call. Mars Rover is headed home sick. Someone needs to fill in for her. Can I make that change? Absolutely. I'm going to open up my schedule editor, and I'm going to take a look at the 23rd. I'll compress my screen a little bit. There's MR, Mars Rover. Okay, she's not going to be able to work. I'm going to click delete on my keyboard and pull her out of there. The yellow cursor kind of indicates where my cursor is. Sorry, the yellow mark indicates where my cursor is. I've clicked delete on my keyboard, pulled her out of there. I'm going to put MEWay in instead. That's ME. And I'm going to publish an update. Now, I'm clicking the File menu at the top. This is a little bit like old school Word or Excel. We are in the process of overhauling this view. It does look a little bit 1997, as somebody said to me the other day. We're going to make it look a whole lot nicer in the coming days. But for the moment, if you click the File menu, you'll see some stuff that's probably familiar. New, open, save, print, stuff like that. The one that's different is this Publish to Amion option. Sometimes people use the word push. We use the word publish to say what we're going to do, or to describe what we're going to do when we want to send this file with its most recent change out to the website. The system does me a favor and remembers my administrative password and my contact email. When I say save to Amion, it takes about a second or so, and it says your file is updated, which means if I go back to the web view of my schedule and I log in fresh or I refresh the screen, I now see MEWay on call 24 today. So that's what it's like to kind of maintain a schedule on a day-to-day basis. Quick changes are very, very quick to make. There are also ways to make changes like this from an online interface. I've been using, the virtual version of our full schedule builder. But if you were on a beach in Tahiti, where we probably all wish we were now, you could use your phone's browser to log in as an administrator, and there's a pencil icon at the top where you can take a look at the schedule and make a quick change. If I see ME on the schedule and need to edit it, I can do it right from the web browser. I'll put VMoon on instead. Click submit and you're all done. So now VMoon is on today. I'll make that easy to see by looking at today's list. So while you need that on-call program that we're going to dig into to build your schedule initially, you can make on-the-fly changes from any web browser, even a phone, which is nice. I'm just emphasizing that a little more today because a lot of people are working remotely, and we want to ensure that schedules are accurate as close to 24/7 as possible these days. All right, so I'm going to head back to the schedule builder. Now that I've shown you what the kind of day-to-day maintenance is, let's take a look at what it's like to build a schedule and learn what some of these crazy icons do and what some of the features in the system are. I'm going to click File one more time and take a look at the options there. This time I'm going to choose New to make a new schedule with you guys. Here's that fork in the road we alluded to earlier. We can build a provider health professional group, aka the attending schedule, or the residency fellowship option down at the bottom, which includes block rotations. We've got a separate session and a separate video on our help index that explains the residency option. Today I'm going to choose the top option. By the way, I forgot to mention that at Amion's help index, out at amion.com, the word help in the center. It takes you to a list of our most commonly asked questions and answers, including a recording of these sessions. So if you couldn't, if someone couldn't make it today to join in and watch, or if you want to watch this session again, I'm planning on updating this attending demo later on. It's also in part listed under the Building Schedules Guide for attending setup. Help Index is a really cool resource. Amion support and training team is typically here 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. if you're on the West Coast. But if it's after hours, if you're on call, if you're a resident working at 2 a.m. on the schedule, the Help Index is pretty handy. We've also got an emergency number on here if it's 2 a.m. and you get into a jam. Sorry for that tangent, but the Help Index is a pretty cool resource. When we build our new schedule, I'm going to choose the top option. We'll build an attending type schedule. And the next screen is our general setup. This is the spot where anything people do comes into play. So I'm adding a couple things for people to do. I'm typing them on my keyboard. I'm clicking enter on my keyboard. I could also click the add button here, and they're adding to the field below. These are the rows or the assignments, or we call them services on our schedule. You can add as many as you want. Amion doesn't care about how many you have. We don't care what they're called. You could have a librarian service or a dog walker service, very open-ended. The green services that you see here are preloaded off-schedule services. They are things that people can be assigned to that make them unavailable to work, and we'll do that together in just a moment. But I'll stick with just a handful of services for now. I'll do the same with staff types. MDs, PAs, RNs, which we can color code any way we'd like. And then I'm going to add a couple staff members to our schedule. Let's see. We'll have a couple MDs. We'll have a couple RNs. And I'll add a couple PAs as well. And again, you can add as many people as you need to. There is a limit, but it's in the hundreds. There's typically no one butting up against the limit of the software. I'll stick with just a handful for our demo today. I'll click Finish and Display Schedule. The option that I see at the end here is for leaving everybody available or making them unavailable by default. If you have a Moonlighter's schedule and you want everyone to be unavailable to work unless they request to work, you'd want that second option. Almost everybody will want the first option here. There's our schedule. I'm going to click and drag those guide bars in the upper left again, and I'm going to dive right into making some assignments by hand as a week's worth of night call for us. Now that's really it. We built a schedule template. It's up here for April. I can bump ahead to March. I'm sorry, May. Let's not go back to March. March was no fun. And we don't have to rebuild our schedule grid again. It's out here for us to kind of keep on keeping on and adding assignments to. The bullseye brings me back to the current date. That's all it takes. We could publish this if we wanted to. Obviously, we're going to do a whole bunch more and set up some guidelines about our services and availability for our staff. But we've built our schedule template, and that is all it takes. If I forgot to add a row or a person, I can head back to File and General Setup and do that here. If I think night call should belong at the bottom of my list of services, I can just click and drag it. You can put these in any order you'd like. The assignments will follow. You might have noticed my screen's a bit dynamic. This is an important point here. This floating toolbar is called the info box, and I sometimes call it my trusty sidekick. It comes in handy no matter what I'm doing, and its contents reflect what I've clicked on. If I click on the spot where a name belongs, I get a list of names. And I have a couple slightly advanced features turned on in here. I have the busy bar showing me the number of weekends each person's got, and a tally for the month that we're looking at, and a tally for the year that we're looking at. I could turn that stuff off if I want a simple list of names. There are lots of neat little toggles in here to make life easier or more complicated, depending on your point of view. If I click on the name of a service along the left, the info box changes. And it tells me, okay, you clicked on night call. Here's everything about night call. It runs 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Well, that's probably not the way night call runs, right? Let's make night call run overnight. We'll have it start at 6 p.m. and run until the next morning. Is night call staffed by all skill levels? Sure. Is it staffed every day? Sure. How about a tally weight? Are some days worth more points than others? Maybe if you work a Saturday night call, you should get 3 points instead of just 1 point. We'll talk more about that when we look at our reporting in a minute. Variable call, so no pattern to the call. It's random. Yep, okay. One call slot, okay. We just have one person on night call at once. Is there a note tied to that service? No, that's okay. How about a day after rule? This is a pretty common and basic rule. We might want a day after rule that says, hey, if you do night call, there's no AM clinic for you the next morning. We don't want you having seen patients all night to be groggy and bleary-eyed and seeing patients in the clinic the next morning. Somebody else can do that. So now there's a rule that prevents people from working AM clinic after night call. All right, let's do a little more sprucing up. The AM clinic, maybe that's not staffed every day. Maybe to work in the AM clinic, it's a Monday through Friday thing. There's no AM clinic on weekends and holidays. That probably makes sense. And vice versa for weekend call, weekdays don't need to be filled. Okay, AM clinic probably doesn't run all day. It's probably an AM kind of thing. And maybe the last thing we should edit is that the SICU is not staffed by all skill levels. If you're working in the SICU, you have to be an MD, which makes my list of staff a whole lot shorter when I'm filling in the SICU. It's just our 2 MDs that are free. All right, so we've added some guidelines about our services. The only other thing I think I didn't mention in the info box here is this little green pager icon, which is if you want to assign a pager to a service instead of a person. All right. Now you might have noticed and be asking yourself, the schedule looks like a calendar here. When you were working with that other schedule, it looked like a table. There is a different way to look at the schedule. The table icon in the far upper left corner kind of looks like a kitchen table, right? And it's the sort of our programming sense of humor that shows the schedule in table format. You can work in either one, the table or the calendar format, doesn't matter. However the schedule looks when you publish it to the website is how it's going to look for your staff. So just make sure things look the way you want them to when you publish, and that's what staff will see online. Either one is fine to work in. The face icon, third from the top left, is interesting. This face, this eyes and nose here, is called Work Preferences, and it's meant to be a profile page of sorts for the folks on the schedule. You can choose who you want to work with from our trusty sidekick, the info box. Let's stick with Patel and say that Patel does not work on Fridays anymore. She's a half-time employee. She's getting ready to retire, so she doesn't work as much as her counterparts anymore. And her abbreviation on the schedule should be PTL. Maybe she has a target number of shifts to work. Maybe she needs a pager number listed. Or maybe an email address. You'll see mouse over notes all over the place, right? If you're not sure what you're going to click on, just like the website, hold your mouse still and you'll get a little explanation of what's going to happen when you click. Maybe there are certain days she likes to work. Maybe we can click on the Works At button and say, the system's asking, hey, do you want to use @amion.com for everybody's email? Sure, why not? If I click on Works At, I can say, Patel does not take a weekend call anymore. She's getting ready to retire. She's a half-time employee. No more weekend call assignments for her. Okay, so we've chopped up Patel here. We've talked about her availability. Let's do one more thing. From the drop-down menu at the top, remember those off-schedule services? We had CME, sick, and vacation. You can add to this list things like PTO, maternity, paternity, stuff like that. I'll choose vacation. And now I'm going to double-click on the schedule. This is a double-click move, by the way. Double-click to put her on vacation this last full week in April. And by the way, you can also see little red marks here when she's actually working already, which is helpful. So now we've given Patel, contact info, said she's half-time, doesn't work on Fridays, doesn't take weekend call, has a separate abbreviation, has some contact info, I think I already said that, is on vacation this last full week. We can chop up everybody's availability, but let's use Patel as our example right now. Now that I've done that, I can go back to the working schedule and, okay, this is the fun part. If you're a scheduling geek like me, this is the fun part. Under the window menu at the top, among many, many other options, and I should mention, Amion being 20 years old, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of options in here. When people ask us whether Amion can do something, for many years we would say, not yet, but let's build it for you. And we built tons of features and stuffed them into the system, and it's kind of my job and my team's job to guide you through and show you how these work. So if you're ever working on a schedule and you're thinking, man, I wish Amion could do this for me, ask us, please, because it's likely someone else has already asked us, and there's a feature hiding in here that will help make your life easier. And probably the most powerful tool is the auto scheduler. It's here under the window menu, and it opens up a window with a lot of options that I probably don't need to mess with. We'll probably streamline these in our overhaul coming up soon. But I can ask the system from this point to fill in parts of the schedule for me, or the whole schedule for me. I'm going to have it fill March, April, and May in. And I'm going to start by filling in the SICU service, because I don't have a lot of people who can work there. Let's fill in that. I'll fill in night call next. Well, actually, before I do that, maybe weekends are pretty sought after. Those are people really want their weekends. And we might actually have a rule about weekends. If you work Saturday, you get Sunday too. Whoever's on the weekend gets the whole weekend. Let's take a slight detour to build a call and shift pattern. And that pattern could be called something like weekend. It could begin on a Monday because I want my Saturday and Sunday to be concurrent. Worker 1, whoever that might be, works Saturday and Sunday every week. It's anonymous, so it just means that whoever lands on a Saturday also gets Sunday. So I'm going to tell my system, hey, weekend call is not variable anymore. It follows the call weekend pattern. Now this is sticking a toe into a slightly more advanced feature, but I wanted to kind of demonstrate that as I auto-schedule. Now when I auto-schedule the weekend call, we'll get the same person on Saturday and Sunday. You can get way more complicated with that call and shift patterns feature if you wish. You can template out big swaths of the schedule and have them repeat automatically. It can be anonymous repetition. There's a whole rabbit hole involved in any kind of repetition to the schedule. Now that we've done that, let's fill in night call next. Okay, and last but not least, the folks who are left over can cover AM clinic. Good. Now let's take a look at how the auto scheduler did, and I'll move some stuff out of the way. Looking pretty good. I don't see any conflict on the schedule at all. Anybody who's working night call is off from AM clinic the next day. That's good. AM clinic is staffed Monday through Friday. Weekend call staffed Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. The SICU only has MDs. And let's look at Patel. I'm going to turn on my highlighter tool for a moment. The highlighter tool lets me click on Patel and see her assignments only. Patel never works on a Friday. Patel doesn't work the week that she has vacation. Patel does not take weekend call service. She does some other stuff on the weekends, but not the weekend call service itself. Not too bad. All right, so that is one way to get the schedule drafted up automatically based on your rules. We can take it a step further. We put in those requests for Patel, all of Patel's work preferences, what she can and can't do, and her vacation time by hand. We could certainly do that. That's fine. A lot of folks do that. There is a feature for letting staff submit their preferences online. If you're out at the website and you're a provider, I'm going to log in as though I'm a provider at that dummy schedule we looked at earlier. If I want to submit my work preferences, I can set up a personal password that lets me in as a specific person. I'm now logged in as L. Claire, and I can look and ask for time off. Lisa has a question. Can you prevent Patel from being on call the weekend before vacation? I think there's a complex rule to do that. There's something called a sequence rule. I don't have it at my fingertips, Lisa. If you want to do that in particular, maybe you could shoot me an email after the session today. I can definitely figure out how that works. But I believe so, yes. I'm logged in now online as L. Claire, one of the staff on my sample schedule. and I'm looking at May. There are two reasons this is helpful. One is obvious, one might be less obvious. As El Claire, I can see that on May 7th, one of my coworkers has already asked for this day off. So if I'm making requests, I might know that, hey, okay, first come, first served. A. Campbell has this day off. I probably shouldn't ask for that Thursday. Maybe I can take the next Thursday off instead. I can add a note about my request, and then when I submit my request, it gets collated automatically and flows into the on-call program. Back in the olden days, I used to send out an email to my 40 or 50 staff. I'd get 40 or 50 replies. I'd have to collate a vacation schedule. That took me hours, and people didn't know what other people had requested. That made it take more time. Once I had my vacation schedule, then I could build the real schedule by hand. When we started using Amion, it was a breeze. It was so much easier. It started taking me 20 minutes instead of like 4 or 5 hours every month. I would have my staff enter their preferences. I would hold my control key and click on the face icon to get a cross section of everybody's requests all together, or if you stretch things out wide enough, their assignments as well. This is nice because I could see if a bunch of people had requested the same day off. Whoa, hang on guys, on 4/8, I can't give you all the same day off. I'm going to have to say first come, first served on this day. And once I had all that information in front of me, automatically collated, I didn't have to do it. People submitted their preferences on their own. Then I'd go back and I'd auto-schedule, as we did, having the system make assignments for me while taking all those requests into account, as well as all my rules and guidelines and all that stuff. So with a couple clicks, I had a draft version of the schedule up and running that took into account what everybody had asked for. Once I've done that, I can publish the schedule, and there's another feature that makes my life easier. It's the feature that lets staff swap shifts with each other. It's an icon at the top that looks like two blue recycle arrows. El Claire can now propose and accept swaps with other coworkers. You can't trade yourself into a system or into a schedule where there's a rule that says you can't work there. But El Claire can propose a swap. A coworker can accept that swap. You can require an admin to approve it, or you don't need to require them to approve it. And then your staff can kind of iron out the details. So I like to let my staff submit their requests. I auto-schedule to make the schedule for me. Then I publish it online and I say, great, guys, the swap feature's turned on. Go ahead and swap with each other to iron out anything you'd like to change. And they're really good about that. So I step back and the schedule is really a breeze to build. Okay, quick recap. We talked about the schedule in table format. We talked about the schedule in calendar format. You can work in either one and publish either one. The face icon, third from the top left, is like a profile page where everybody's preferences and their contact info goes. And then fourth from the top left is this Sigma icon. And this is the reporting page where everything's counted up. I think the most common view is probably to count up shifts by service over whatever time period you want. You can look at the schedule that you're on, that's April, or here's the full year. So this tells me that Patel has 8 AM clinics and a total of 56 shifts with her 5 vacation days. Now you might have noticed, this is kind of a neat tool. Again, you might have to be a scheduling geek like me. But Rosen has 13 AM clinics, Ahmed has 11. Well, that's probably not going to be cool. I can click and drag from one person to the other. I'm going to click from Rosen and drag and drop on Ahmed's total. Now they both have 12. This is a feature we call Tweak the Tallies. And there's a window open here that kind of tells you what the change was. We took the AM clinic from Rosen to Ahmed on Thursday 4/2. So sometimes when I'm building a schedule and I look at the tallies and something's off, I don't want to have to toggle back to the schedule. I want to just kind of click and drag a few things here to make things more equitable. You can also count up hours. These are the hours based on what hours we gave each service, or the shifts or hours by day of the week, and get a breakdown by weekday. Check out the weekends versus weekdays. Make sure those are evenly divided. Patel works a little bit less than her counterpart. We made her a half-time employee, although she is the only other MD, so she's covering a bunch of SICU, which is why she's not at quite 50%. And remember the points that we set up early on? We said that if you work a Saturday night call, you get 3 points instead of just 1. This is a representation of that, or a count of that, kind of like a differential. So Patel has 56 total shifts throughout the year, but she's earned 58 points. And that means that one of her shifts must have been a Saturday night call. She earned 3 points for that. Smith has 77 total shifts for the year, but 81 points. That's a differential of 4, I think. Same thing here. So Smith has a couple, Wang has 1. So if you're paying people differently based on the shifts they work, based on the day of the week or something like that, you can have the system do that as well. And as I mentioned earlier, these tallies are pretty flexible or transportable. We can import data into other systems. If you use a payroll system like ADP or Kronos or something, we can take the Amion data and have it flow into that other system. Basically, you would kind of share your login with those with a tech in one of those systems, and they would grab the data and pull it in. So you don't have to build your schedule twice in 2 different places. You can build your schedule in Amion and have that data populate another system. That works well with residency evaluation systems, lots of other components. We're open to new kind of partnerships along those lines. We like to be as open source as possible. Someone has a question. If the staff share a password to view what the schedule built, how do they do this for the individual schedule? Good question. When staff are logging into the website, they typically will use the shared login and see the schedule. Simple as that. If they want to pull up a personal schedule, they can click on their name and see just their assignments, and anyone can do that. You're really not prompted for a personal password unless you want to do something like request a time off or swap a shift. If you want to do one of those things, the system's going to say, hey, you need to log in as a specific person. And if you don't have a specific person login, you can have the system email you a login link. A couple different ways to do that. If you're going to have your staff all submit requests online and you want to save them that step so that they don't have to have the system send them a password, you can do it on your own. To do that, you'd log into the website as an administrator again, and you'd send out a work preference form to everybody with an email address and say something like, need your requests by Friday, please, something like that. Then each person gets an email with a link in it, a personalized link, and all they have to do is click the link and start asking for days off. Does that make sense? Sure, yeah, no problem. Okay, so we talked about reporting. There's a little delimiter here, like a divider, and to the left are all the different views, the 4 views we've been talking about. To the right, it might seem like, wow, there can't be that many more views. These are actual tools. They're really simple, and we'll go through them quickly. But the 4 in the upper left are the ones where you'll spend most of your time. The residency schedule is very similar to this, but it includes block pages. So if you're working on a residency schedule, you'll see something like this, but in the top left are different colored icons for each staff or class in your residency. Let's start here. So we talked about the 4 different views, but let's talk about these next tools in brief. The blue dot over the white dot opens up the schedule content window. And this is a place where you can chop up your schedule. You can kind of turn rows on or off. If you had a massive schedule, a big schedule with 80 or 90 rows of clinic, you might want to chop it up into more manageable pieces. You might want subset number 2, represented by these 2 dots at the top, to become your AM night schedule. And you can actually change the title up at the top. The AM night schedule is subset number 2. Maybe subset number 3 is our SICU weekend schedule. And I'm just being kind of silly and arbitrary here. Obviously, these names don't make a whole lot of sense. But now I've got 3 separate pages. I've got a page with everything. I've got my AM night schedule, and I've got my SICU weekend schedule. You have 8 options here for different subsets, although if you hold Shift, you get another 8. If you hold Control, you get another 8. If you hold Shift and Control, you get another 8. So there are 32 different subset options here. You can take a massive, massive schedule and chop it up into more manageable pieces this way. And this also is true out at the website. If you chop it up here, the website has different sets as well. So this particular schedule has set number 1, which shows a couple things, but there's also the pediatric attending schedule, which is just one row on the schedule, and the call 24 schedule subset. There are a couple different options out here. These guys this is one of the schedules we share among my fellow trainers, so I believe somebody's in there working on this right now. Subsets is a really great tool, schedule content I should call it. The blue eye brings back your info box, that floating toolbar. If you ever misplace that trusty sidekick, the blue eye will help you get it back. You can change your date range. Most people will schedule a month at a shot, but if you're wanting to schedule in smaller or longer chunks of time, you can do that with the date range option. You can customize shift times. We have an AM clinic that runs Monday through Friday, and it's 8 a.m. to noon. But, on Fridays, our AM clinic runs a little bit differently. Everybody gets out at 11:45 so they can make it to conference on time. So I will customize the time for that particular day. I can do it for a single day, or I could make it so that every Friday has those hours. Now you'll see a clock anytime the hours are different than the normal standard hours for that service. We can split a shift. If Monday the 9th, Patel is working AM clinic but can't work the entire thing, the split shift icon lets me choose a different person to take over. Ahmed will come in halfway through at 10 a.m. or at whatever time I designate and kind of take over for Patel. You can split a shift 3 ways as well if you need to. You can add notes all over the schedule too. Notes are really, really flexible. Notes can belong to people. They can belong to services. They can belong to days. They can be public. They can be private. They can be color-coded. Notes are really flexible. I might add a note to this day saying, ending. This probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. To make conference easy, something like that. We can color code those notes to mean something. And we can tie them to a person. I could go on about notes. One of the nice things about notes, if you're printing the schedule, is that they print out as a little legend. If you're on the website, by default, notes are little mouse over notes. You have to hold your mouse over them to kind of see what they say. But if you're printing out the schedule, which works pretty well, you will see a little legend down at the bottom. I probably would print from the call view, I think. Or the tape. I'm sorry, my words are failing me. The calendar view is going to look a little bit better on a piece of paper. So let's print that. I'll enlarge it a bit. And there's my little legend down at the bottom with my note kind of spelled out because you can't really hold your mouse over a piece of paper. And there's also a time and date stamp up at the top so I can see how fresh that schedule is. That piece of paper on the cubicle wall, I'll know how old that is. That's handy as well. There's a question about adding a second physician if we had to add a staff member for that day only. Not a full split, but the same hours? Sure. If I have a couple people covering AM clinic for me, as opposed to Patel and Ahmed who split this, maybe on the 10th I need 2 people to cover AM clinic. I'll click on the name of my service along the left and I'll change 1 call slot in my trusty sidekick in the info box here to 2 call slots. And for the moment I have 2 rows. I'm going to add a second person to work. Ahmed's going to help out again that following day. And to keep this clean, I'm going to click back on the name of my service along the left and condense it down to 1 slot again. So here's a bit of a nice kind of A-B comparison. Here's splitting a shift between 2 people. 1 person takes over for another. And here on the 10th, Ruiz and Ahmed work the entire shift, the whole shift long. Yeah, no problem. Great question. Last but not least, there's our highlighter tool. And with that highlighter tool turned on, I can click on somebody's name and all their assignments will highlight. It's also handy in the table view. I like to right-click on the highlighter tool for a couple more options, including maybe the day and row. And this way I get kind of a crosshairs. I can see what column and what row I'm in very easily. And then the question mark takes you to our website's help index. Simple as that. There are other features in the system. This session's meant to be like an Amion 101, so to speak. But for example, under window and calendar subscriptions, I can set up schedule change notifications to send out an email if the change happens within the next 28 days. I want people to be notified. And maybe my director should be CC'd, I can do that. I can set up reminders to go out 24 hours before a shift starts. I can decide what shifts get synced to outside calendar systems. Under File and Preferences, we have a dozen or more submenus here. If you're a radiology group, you probably want the website to have a dark background and light text. You can play around with what people first see when they log in. Lots and lots and lots of options here. It's kind of our job to show you around here. One neat option I was helping somebody with this morning is if you right-click on the name of a service, you can set up an Amion staffing link, whereby you can pull in data from another Amion schedule and have that row mirrored on your schedule. Those folks change their assignments, the change appears on your schedule automatically, kind of saving people from doing double work. A lot of neat features like that. We've packed this system filled with features over the past 20 years, and we have a pretty robust and friendly and caffeinated support team here to help kind of guide you to use them maximally, make your sort of scheduling process as efficient as possible. So we've got a few minutes left in the session here. I want to pause and see what questions are out there. If there's something you'd like me to repeat, I certainly don't mind. I'd be glad to do that. If there's something I can go into more detail on or a specific feature you're wondering about, please let me know. I'd be happy to do that as well. It's about 4 minutes before the top of the hour. I'm not in a hurry today. If people want to stick around after 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. West Coast, please feel free to do that. For anybody who might have joined in late, if you're in via Zoom, you'll see a toolbar at the top of your screen. Over to the right is the chat window. For me, it's tucked under ... more. That chat option is where we've been talking back and forth. If you want to type something in there, I'll see it, and I'd be happy to answer questions in the order they come in. Please feel free. Lisa asks, is there an environment where we can sign in and play without being in our own schedule? Sure. Yeah, Lisa, if it's helpful, we could set up a trial account for you. That way you have like another password to publish to, and you can really go as crazy as you'd like. We're very easygoing about that stuff. Amion doesn't really have a sales team. I'm listed as the sales guy, but I don't even know what that means. We've always grown via word of mouth, and it's let us be very, very flexible about that stuff. So yeah, Lisa, if you want to email me, just say, hey, can I get an extended trial account to play around with, and I'll set one up for you or show you how to set one up. Someone says, if an admin wants to approve swaps, where do you go to turn that feature on or off? Great question. Under File and Preferences, in that big list of preferences, there's one called Amion Trades. And if you decide to let staff trade shifts, there are some options about that. And then way down at the bottom is admin must approve trades or open shift pickups. You can differentiate between the two. So File, Preferences, Amion Trades, down at the bottom is the spot, I think. Amber asks, I mentioned about messaging systems. Does it work with Volta? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but yes, we can send messages out to that system and like 12 or 13 others. Basically what happens is when you're building your schedule and you're adding some contact info for folks like Patel, if you're adding maybe a cell number for Patel. Let me get clear of that other window. Here's Patel's cell number. Once you assign someone a cell number, you can click on their cell icon and see a bunch of different options to send it out to. I don't think Volta is listed in here because I think that's a system-wide thing we would turn on for you. But yeah, we can send messages out to people's Volta app. Someone's asking, can you show where the physicians would go to request vacation? Sure. Yeah, they're going to, whoops, I'll leave that info box open. They're going to log into the website online, and when they're looking at their schedule, there's an icon at the top that looks like a sun with sunglasses. It's got the mouse over note, My Requests. And they can head there use their personal password, and then click on the days they want to request off. You can also request shifts off if you wish. So it doesn't have to be a full day. You can ask for individual shifts off. And you might add a note saying, hey, it's Susie's dance recital this night. I really need this day off, and then submit your requests. Once they're submitted, they'll flow into the on-call program for that schedule editor to see automatically. Danielson, I think, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing, is this being recorded? Yes. When you're out at amion.com, you'll see the help index up at the top. And if you're not an admin like me, you'll see the normal public view. And it's going to end up in the attendings demos out there. I'll probably also use part of this or all of this for the attending setup guide, either one. And yes, if you'd like an extended trial or something, yeah, shoot us an email. We're easy about that stuff. No problem. Amber says, can you send messages to specific services? Great question. So Amber, this is kind of a neat thing. I'm going to log into the original schedule we looked at under Site. If I wanted to send a message out to this group, I could do it. Let's use anesthesia as an example. If I want to send a message out, these guys have some preloaded messaging options. I can send something to all fellows. That's one way to do it. I can set up a paging group that includes certain people, or I can set up a paging group that includes certain services. One of the neat things at Amion is something called a switchboard account. If you're a big hospital-wide group of schedules, you might set up a switchboard account whereby people with switchboard access, a special password that is, can log in and they can do three things. They can see extra contact info that's normally hidden from the public. So switchboard folks can see extra contact info. Switchboard folks can make sign-outs right on the web. If it's 2 in the morning and Andy and Anesthesia's home in bed and the switchboard gets a call, Dr. Hochbaum is not going to make it today. Can you sign out to Dr. Gunk? Yep, no problem. The switchboard could do that, could add a note about it, and once they click submit, Dr. Gunk appears, and you get this little covering icon. So switchboard folks have access to keep that big list accurate around the clock. And the third thing switchboard folks can do is something called blast paging. And this is for a hospital-wide system, but they can send out messages to a burn team. This is a sample, but the burn team here includes folks from anesthesia and dermatology, separate schedules that can get a single message with one send. The ER team is a little bit bigger. The cardio consult team is a little bit different too. You can predefine those teams and those people and services so that one message can go to all those places at once. Great question. Someone asks, to piggyback off the other question, how does the admin get the request to approve scheduling changes? Yeah, so once those requests are submitted online, staff have logged in, they've clicked their submit work preferences, they've signed in with their personal password, they've chosen a day, and they've clicked submit. Once that data flows into the on-call program, if I'm the schedule editor, I like to hold control on my keyboard and click that face icon, and I'll see those requests come in. Now, you can't, within the system, there isn't a function for denying somebody's request. You'd see the requests they entered, but there isn't a way to automatically let them know that they aren't allowed to do that. If I see Wang ask for the 9th off here, and he's the third person to do it, I have to send him a separate email outside of Amion and say, hey, sorry, I had to deny your request. There isn't a mechanism, at least yet anyway, within Amion to deny those requests. You can certainly control them. You can turn them off the way I'm turning them off here and deny them. But to let Wang know, you'd have to send a separate email outside the system. We do keep track of when those preferences are submitted. So if you're an admin and you need to log in as an admin, you can take a look at your staff requests and you'll see a bunch of gobbledygook. This code here doesn't mean much, but if you need to see the order they came in, this is all tracked for you. So some people asked for April 17th off, L. Claire and G. Pluto. and they're in the order they submitted their request. So at a glance, I can see L. Claire asked for this day off before G. Pluto did. If I want to see more details, I can click on their name. L. Claire, these are all of her requests. She asked for April 17th off on April 2nd. Okay, cool. Back in the list, if I click on G. Pluto, he asked for April 17th off on April 22nd. That doesn't make much sense. That was probably one of us using it as an example. So he came in second place there, and is probably going to get bumped if I can only have one person off that day. Good question, and I hope my answer isn't overwhelming. I hope it sort of hints that there's a lot more to the system here than you might tackle at first glance. That's where we come in. So if you're out at Amion.com and you see the contact link, you'll see me at the sales extension. That doesn't mean much. You might get me at the support extension too. My whole team answers the support number, and also support at Amion.com is the best way to get a hold of us. There are 7 or 8 of us who just tackle all the messages that come in to that email. So you might find if you write us an email, you get a reply in like 5 minutes, maybe less, or maybe more if I break for lunch after this and my team has their hands full. So Elisa asked about my contact info. I'm here. I'm Lee at Amion.com. And here's our main number. 617-575-2733. There's a toll-free number too, but most folks dial our main number to get through straight away. All right. Great questions today. I really appreciate your thoughtful questions. I'm going to leave the session open in case anybody wants to stick around and ask anything further, but that is about it from me. I'll probably break for lunch in a few minutes, but I'll leave the session open in case anybody wants to stick around, as I said. But thanks very much for your time today and questions. Really, really great. I appreciate them. I hope everyone stays safe out there, and hope to hear from you soon. Have a nice rest of the week.